Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to week 2. Gonna set a DraftKings.com lineup here. Thanks for joining me again this week. Hopefully, you all had a profitable week 1. Had some Spencer Ware shares and some Saint shares, and maybe worked in some Minnesota defense. That would have set you up nice in cash, that's for sure. But we're not gonna dwell a whole lot on week 1 since we're in week 2. So let's do it. As you can see, I've already got Marcus Mariota plugged in as my quarterback, and I guess that's just where we will start out constructing this lineup. Mariota comes in at $6K. I think it's a really good price point for him. It's not super risky since he does have those legs. I think he averaged like 22 rushing yards a game last year. Don't hold me to that. I think it was just above 20. But in week 1, he had 272 passing yards and 2 TDs, and he did have that INT, but he's going to go against Detroit, and they ranked middle of the pack in pass defense last year. Football Outsiders had them at 16th in pass DVOA. So it's not like a super plus, matchup, but it's not like we're targeting a team that was good against the pass. They were literally middle of the pack, according to Football Outsiders. I wouldn't mind the team total just being a smidge higher, but they are sitting at an implied 23 points, and quite frankly, that's fairly healthy. The Lions gave up 1.7 TDs to opposing teams' quarterbacks last year, and as I mentioned before, I mean, it's really all about just kind of setting that floor with his legs. If we can get 2 points out of him, on 5 or 6 rush attempts and hopefully grab 20 to 25 yards on that, I think it's a pretty good median projection for him. If you can find the end zone, awesome. If not, whatever. So let's get another running back. Let's get another running back. We don't have one yet. Let's get our first running back. And while I think David Johnson is head and shoulders the best play on the slate, just due to his pass catching ability, really big on targeting running backs that are home favorites and high team totals. I think Arizona's at like 25.5 or. Actually, they may be even pushing 26.5. I'd have to double check. It's just a little pricey for me this week based on the current cash roster construction that I'm going with. So we're going to scroll down just a little bit. We're going to get CJ Anderson. And I just alluded to it, but I like guys who are home favorites and good projected team totals. And honestly, CJ Anderson, much like David Johnson, checks off all the boxes that I look for at running back, just at almost $1,000 cheaper. So he's got a team total that's above 23 points. He's playing at home. His team's a favorite. He gets high red zone usage. He's not nearly as involved in the passing game as David Johnson is, but he's still involved in the passing game. And he gets a plus matchup. So they're 6-point home favorites, 25.5 projected team total. And he touched the ball. Oh gosh, what was it? I think he just over 50%. I think it was like 53%, but he saw 82% of his team's snaps. So I mean, that offense is revolving around him. So like I said, I think depending on your roster construction, Anderson can be your most expensive running back this week. I don't think you necessarily have to pay up for David Johnson if you get some elite wide receivers. Speaking of that high team total, with Denver, we're going to jump down to tight end here, and we're going to grab Virgil Green. And there's going to be one other guy that I'm targeting who are probably a little risky for cash, but it'll all balance out, and you'll kind of see why. Indy did just give up 15 points to Ebron. He found the end zone, but if he hadn't scored that touchdown, he still had, I think, 7 targets, or no. He had 5 targets that he caught all 5 of them, and it was just under 50 yards. I think it was like 46 or something like that. So as I mentioned before, Denver has one of the higher team totals sitting at 26 points, and Virgil played 70% of his team's snaps, and he also had a decent amount of targets. He saw 6 targets in week 1. So I think just with that high team total and the snap percentage, I'm totally fine punting at the tight end position. It really looks like it's kind of ending up being just a real dumpster fire of a position. If anything, if you want to pay it for any tight end, I think Greg Olsen is without a doubt the safest play at tight end. Delaney Walker's getting a lot of buzz. He's at 4,500, so it's a really good price point. I just am looking to grab somebody that's a lot cheaper than that. Ebron at 3,500 is great. And then I think Virgil Green really is just kind of like that next price tier that's a lot lower. So got Virgil Green at tight end. I guess while we're down here, we'll just chunk out another cheap position and won't spend a whole lot of time on it. But the Pats at $3,000, I think, are priced very appropriately. Miami's projected to only score 17 points, and Miami's going into New England, into Foxborough, and they're a huge road underdog. I don't think you need to overthink this one, but if you want to, you can go look at the Raiders. I think they're, $2,700. So if you want to save a little bit, I think you could get kind of sneaky and grab Oakland here against Matt Ryan, who's usually good for a pick, although he looked pretty good in week 1. You could do that. I just don't think you need to, mostly because we're punting here at tight end. And then there's another spot that we're going to save some cash on as well. So let's see. Let's go grab another running back. We're going to get the man with the wooden head, Danny Woodhead. Woodhead was like a top 20 running back for me coming into the season in PPR formats. And that's when I was expecting Keenan Allen to hog, 11-ish targets a game. But with Keenan Allen out, I honestly think Danny Woodhead will be in my DraftKings lineup where it's full PPR every week until he's priced appropriately. There's no reason not to. He's not dependent on game flow. So he's just catching passes. He out-snapped Melvin Gordon almost like 3-1. It was, or 2-1. He saw 68% of the team snaps while Gordon was at 32%. When Keenan Allen has been out, Danny Woodhead has averaged almost a full 2 targets more per game. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge. It's exactly what we want to see, where we can just grab an extra 2 targets for exactly what he was priced when Keenan Allen was in the mix. So I think at $5,200, there's no reason to grab him here. He really is a staple in my cash game lineups. I don't see any reason of pivoting off of him for anything, unless you're just getting different exposure in your tournaments and those kind of lineups. So let's see, we got Danny Woodhead. We got some other wide receivers we need to fill and a flex. Let's go fill that flex. And we're going to get a guy by the name of TJ Yeldon. And as far as I'm concerned, Chris Ivory is not playing in this game. He got released from the hospital sometime on Tuesday, and he hasn't been at a single team practice since then. So I couldn't imagine that he plays Sunday. If he does, I think we have to get off Yeldon, and that's going to change up a lot because Yeldon is at such a nice price point. He's a bit on the riskier side, as he doesn't really, as I said before, check all my boxes, and I definitely just did the air quotes. But I think that's baked into that $4,700 salary, right? So I think you can kind of get away with him, just mostly because of that price. I'm a firm believer that anytime a running back is projected to touch the ball, 19, 20-ish times, at that low of a salary, you should be giving him a very hard look, regardless of his skill set and how he, what his weight is and his 40 time and a lot of those factors. If he's going to touch the ball 20 times, I think we need to look at him long and hard. And in week 1, he saw 21 carries and had 4 receptions on 6 targets. Like I said before, he doesn't check all my boxes. He's a road underdog, and his team only has an implied team total of 22. However, he does check one, and he gets a really plus matchup. The Chargers allowed the highest point per attempt in the league last year, hovering just above 0.70, and they graded out as the 31st worst rush defense according to Football Outsiders rush DVOA metric. And remember, they gave up the 4th most rush yards and the 5th most TDs to opposing teams' running backs in 2015. So just to go over that again, crazy good matchup, 20 touches, or right around 20 touches, should see 3 to 4 targets, and he's $4,700 when we want to pay up for wide receivers. So that's why Yeldon's in my lineup, and much like Danny Woodhead, not a guy I'm steering away from in cash. So we've got 3 wide receivers here, and we'll go get rid of the boring one, the non-sexy one, the one that is probably bringing the most risk to this lineup out of any of these players, and that's Jeremy Curley. But he's the minimum. He is the minimum. He averaged 0.24 PPR points per snap in week 1. And to just put that in perspective, that was under what Moncrief, Alshon, TJ Yeldon did by just a few tenths of a point. However, it was above what DeAndre Hopkins, Eddie Lacy, Tajay Sharp, T.Y. Hilton did, and there's a handful of other high-end wide receivers that finished below that same point per snap total. And I guess what I'm getting at here is I think you just really need to full on embrace the variance that the wide receiver position can offer. And I think this is the perfect week to do it, especially at this wide receiver 3 spot. I'm not telling you to do it with one of your wide receivers and then with one of your flexes, just this one wide receiver spot due to the next 2 players that I'm going to get at here. So totally understand if you want to get off Curley. I don't blame you for wanting to do it. You can downgrade one of these next wide receivers and go up to Tajay or somebody like that who should realistically expect 8 to 9 targets. But we're going to go get wide receivers, and we don't have to scroll down at all. We got $9,250 for each one of these wide receivers. Antonio Brown's not going to work into this lineup. While I do think he is, regardless of the matchup, so regardless of Adele's matchup, I think he's always going to be the number 1 wide receiver. I tweeted this out the other day, but AB has the highest floor and the highest ceiling every week. In 2015, he had 7 games of 30 or more DraftKings points, and 5 of those games were 39 or more points. So I don't really care what the matchup is, or like I said, or what it is for anyone else, like ODB's matchup. AB is always number 1. With that said, we are going to go with Odell Beckham Jr. here. Saints are trash. We know that. They were 31st in pass DVOA according to Football Outsiders. And the Giants have the highest second team total sitting at 28.5 points. They're heavy home favorites. I don't think that you can really get away from using Odell Beckham. Remember, he had the 4th highest point per opportunity as well as an above league average 9.5 yards per target in 2015. So with that, we've got $8,900, and we are going to use AJ Green. I think there are 3 elite wide receivers on this slate, and I think AJ Green is one of those 3. And I don't typically like to target a team with this low of a team total. Cincinnati is only pushing 23.5 or just 23 points. I think it's like 22.75 if you really break it down. But I'm totally fine with AJ Green. I'm willing to overlook that not quite as good of a team total as I would typically like to target. And I don't think you need to read into this a lot, but I think it is interesting. In his last 6 games versus Pittsburgh, he's averaged 14 targets, 8.5 receptions, and 115 receiving yards. He also has 8 TDs in those 6 games. So like I said, I don't apply a ton of weight to that. I think the most important thing with AJ Green is he did exactly what we expected him to do coming into this year. He saw a league high 12 receptions on 13 targets last week. So while he didn't see the highest amount of targets, Allen Robinson had 14 or 15, depending on what you consider catchable or what you consider a target. But he only caught 6 of those. So I think AJ Green, head and shoulders, the 3rd wide receiver on this slate. You could argue that he's right there with ODB. Like I said, I still think Antonio Brown's ahead of ODB regardless of the matchup. So that's what we've got for week 1 in cash. I know it's a little crazy, mostly with this Jeremy Curley, but playing the snaps, with Curley and the targets, if you can get 6 or 7 targets, due to the high pace, due to the high pace that San Francisco plays or that Chip Kelly plays. I think they ran close to 80 plays last week. Should just see a little bit more opportunity there. You can work in game theory and say they'll be trailing and forcing the ball, but it's not always the most ideal spot. So I think if you want to, you can rework this a little bit. But this is where I'm at for cash. You can get off the Patriots. You can go to the Raiders. You can get off Virgil Green. You can go to Eric Ebron. You can get off Odell and go to Antonio Brown. But in order to do that, you're really going to have to not use AJ Green, and you're going to have to use a guy like Julian Edelman, who saw a handful of targets. I really like Edelman again. If Gronkowski's not in, that'll allow you to go to Antonio Brown, and then you can use the Raiders, and then you should be able to also get a guy like Ebron in or Walker or something like that. So similar lineup, but just a little bit different construction here with working in Brown, maybe not as risky of a tight end in Walker or Ebron. Honestly, I think those three, literally, when it comes to the risk factor, though, are all the same, and that's why I went to Virgil Green, so I can get some of that extra cash. So, with that, if you guys have any questions, any comments, or any questions, just drop them down in the comments. I'll obviously try and get to them as I can. And best of luck in week 1, guys, or week 2. Yeah, week 2. All right, see ya.